I'm about to put in my notice that I'm leaving my company. A big part of why I'm leaving is directly related to my boss. I don't want to completely burn bridges, but how do I say I'm leaving because of her without saying it's because of her? I like this question actually. When you're leaving your job, be classy. You can go give the great once in a lifetime speech about how
Yeah.
much she sucked as a boss and how much you hated your boss and this, that, and the other thing. You can do all of that. Do that in your shower and do not do that at work. When you resign, I think you want to thank your company for the opportunity. You want to thank your boss for everything she's done for you, even if it's not very much. And then you want to say, I'm leaving for a great opportunity. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to do all these things. Then if you're asked in an exit interview, hey, what are things we could do differently? Do you have any feedback for us? I think you politely say, hey, I really struggled with so-and-so as a boss. I think there's a couple things that she does really well. Here are those things. And I think these are things that she could work on or that have impact on people that work for her. I think you don't want to make your leaving feel bitter. I don't think you want to avoid the issue of your boss playing a big role in it, but you also want to get excited and hopeful and focused on what's ahead and not what you're leaving. You want to run to something, not from something. Whatever you say, just be polite, be professional about it. Don't go into great detail. Don't get super emotional. Don't belabor the point. Go on your way and have a new fabulous life.
Amen. Amen to that. And first of all, quick shout out. That's Erica. That's the former CEO of Barstool. She's awesome, and I love what she's doing now as she moves into the next phase of her career. But it comes down to a rule that I have been practicing since day one, 25 years in the workforce. It is I build bridges, I don't burn them. And I can tell you I've been fired and let go from many a company, and there's only one role where I've had to scorch earth napalm that, and it needed to be. But otherwise, hold your head up. And I really believe in this, and this was shown to me by Gary Vee when I got let go over there. It's how an employee feels on the way out can be more important than they feel on the way in. And that works two ways. As an employee, too, you don't want to be known as that employee that talks shit about everybody. Be humble, just move on. What are you guys thinking here?
Well, I have built a career on the back of a toxic work experience. So, having said that, I think that there's a classy way to do it and there's a trashy way to do it. And I've always leaned into, protecting people's names, protecting, the timelines, protecting, the companies that you've worked for, because at the end of the day, even if it was a more negative experience, or there were negative elements, you never want, again, like you said, to burn bridges. And it served a purpose. At the end of the day, you can't look back and say that, oh, this experience did nothing for me, because even if it pushed you towards something more positive, if you learned from it, if you grew from it, even if it was a negative experience, it's part of your journey, and it's you can't say that it didn't do anything for you.
It happened. It's just a matter of how you position and frame it,
Yeah,
and how you
give it
want to
to
be
the
perceived out
respect it
there.
deserves, for sure. Joel,
Joel, what do you think? Keep it real.
Look, I'll be honest here. It's just more corporate nonsense to me, and this is a huge problem. Like, it's all about lying, saying the right thing, and I agree with both of you. This is the best thing for your career, without a doubt. But that's why I did an article recently and said 5 lies you'd say in an interview, right? Because it's a game, and it's just, you got to say the right things. You got to think about your reputation. But to me, it just highlights the fact that, like, we get into these companies, we get into these situations, and you just can't be real, because you know what? I've had some bad bosses, okay?
We all have.
And
Come on.
I did the honesty thing where I was like, look, this is really impacting other people. I'm having other people come to me, blah, 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 blah. And then I got put on a performance plan. And it's like, and it's because I did it in the wrong way. And here's the take. I don't think you can approach it from an emotional point of view where you're like in the heat of the moment. Completely agree with that. But I sometimes, man, like, we got to get okay with, like, hearing, like, real feedback and real talk. And I actually think that, like, perpetuating these things, it just makes it more of a game. So I agree with everything that she said, for, like, the sake of your career and for the sake of your reputation. And I'm with you, Adam, 100%. But yeah, this is why I'm unemployable, because I just got to a point where I'm like, I don't want to play these games anymore with people.
I feel you, dude. Right there, it's like, how much do you want? Like, you being your authentic self versus playing the game versus making sure that you're employable versus
Yeah, it's
talking
tough.
smack in your reputation. It's a fine line. It's a very fine line. But as long as you know the truth and you actually take those learnings and use them as red flag indicators for you doing your own due diligence in your job search and saying, listen, I had those crappy bosses. Now I know the right questions to ask when I'm interviewing to hopefully not have a similar experience. But guess what? There's jerks everywhere.
Yeah, well, and that's
It's
that's the other
true.
point, right? It's like, I think we got to just get away from this fallacy of like perfect place to work and like perfect things. I don't care
Ah,
what
that's
you're
so
Agree.
involved
true.
in.
Yeah.
If you're in a community, if you're in a workplace, a nonprofit, people are imperfect and people are going to make mistakes, and you have to
Right.
have that expectation that not everything is going to go your way either. So I've learned a lot, and like honestly, this is the advice that I give to
Good.
people now: is play the game, do the smart thing, think
I have
about
a,
your
I have a
future.
question too for you guys. Related to this, I've been laid off, and I've also been asked to not share publicly that it was a layoff by the company that laid me off. What do you guys think about that?
Well, was it an NDA and was your severance tied to it? That's
Exactly.
No,
another shitty
no,
thing they do,
no, neither.
right? Like I've seen that before.
But
Look, I
like,
mean,
doesn't it like help you if you were to say I was laid off versus like I left?
Well,
well, I mean, not. I mean, you don't say that publicly, though,
it's
right?
the
I mean,
optics, right? It's the optics. You could do whatever you want. Like there's been time, I mean, to cut you off, Joel. There's been times I've been fired, and that boss said, "Hey, listen, I don't care how you want to spin it out there. Say you were laid off, whatever works for you. I know it didn't work out here, but we don't want to burn you on the other side and say you were fired. You know, whatever you want to do from an optics, we'll support that. I mean, I've had that too from a great boss, and because at that time it was my fault because I didn't do what they hired me for.
yeah.
Why I got laid off. So it's
That's
really,
smart.
I also think like, you just one thing I will say is a great takeaway from that is like think more about the future, and I love that idea of like, like, hey, once that situation is over, and I say this in interviews all the time, like whether you had in a gap, whether you got laid off, whether you got fired, whatever the case is, just say, hey, it didn't work out, and then make it all about the next opportunity in the future. I do actually think that's a great mindset to have, and
Yeah.
just go look. Otherwise, it's like you're gonna let that toxic boss continue to just like have space in your mind. Focus on the future. So if you're in an interview and they go, well, what happened? Well, it wasn't a culture fit, or there was a misalignment in the mission. But
Mhm.
I'm really excited about you guys, and this is why.
Well said.
You addressed it, and then you
Totally.
made it about the company.
Yeah,
So
it's interesting because I went from being in a toxic workplace to 3 weeks later getting hired in the best place I've ever worked. Shout out Wade and Wendy, and being like,
Drew?
oh, this is Drew Austin, freaking love that guy, and being like, oh wow, like this is actually what leadership looks like. This is what it feels like to be really a part of a team, to feel, like I'm valued. And that's what I started to talk publicly about. It wasn't on, the toxic work experience, although that was part of the, that juxtaposition. That's a crazy,
Yeah.
it's a crazy thing to
And-
happen.